Ian Lee reporting from Cairo. For more on the showdown in Egypt, let's bring in the head of the Global Strategy Project, Marco Vincenzo, who's here with me in our London studio. Marco, do you think that today, in the coming hours, we're going to see some kind of an agreement with Morsi and his political opponents, or is the army going to intervene?
I don't know if there's going to be an agreement immediately. After the deadline, there's going to probably be a process of further stalemate, further negotiation, further talks. Leaders of neither side want an outbreak of violence. But when you have a situation as fluid as this, and there's a game of brinksmanship going on, the slightest spark can lead to a vicious downward cycle that can spin out of control.
Do you think that people want the army to step in? Is that what the majority want? And would that be good for Egypt?
It depends who you're speaking about, the majority, because the numbers are quite debatable still. I think there's been those who have been opposed to Morsi from the beginning who remain opposed and are steadily opposed. But there is still an undercurrent for the past 12 months in Egyptian society that's been turning against Morsi. Much of it has to do with economic mismanagement. Much of it has to do with political intransigence, political ineptitude, and a failure to reach out to other segments of society beyond this political base. Last year, he won an election, 51%, but it was 1/3 eligible voters that turned out. That's not a popular mandate. That underscores the need to reach out.
Give us a sense of what your understanding is of what's happening inside the Muslim Brotherhood, because there are much more hardline factions on the one hand, youth, modern-type reformists on the other, and everybody else in between.
Exactly. It's not a monolithic group. There's a generational difference, a difference in different segments in terms of ideology. But I think what their strength is their ability to mobilize and organize in times of crisis, and that's what they're able to do effectively, and particularly now. So I think they have quite a united front, and they remain determined to support Morsi. Obviously, the only exit and the only way out of this is a negotiated political settlement.
What about any backlash from jihadists if the army steps in?
Sure, there are those radical elements who were involved in an armed struggle in the 80s and the 90s. Many were released from jail in the last 2 years. Those do present a serious threat. And if you've seen in places like the Sinai Peninsula, many of them have been operating there. Some have been operating in places like Libya and throughout the region, and their ability to strike remains real.
What kind of impact is what we're seeing happening in Egypt today, and what ultimately does turn out at the end of the day, what impact will it have in the rest of the region?
I'd say it was a significant impact, because Egypt has always had influence throughout the region. Especially Islamists throughout the region tend to look at Egypt, at the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. So what happens in Egypt will definitely set precedents and examples for other parts of the region.
What about the clashes we're hearing between pro and anti-Morsi supporters and detractors?
Listen, within both camps, you have more radical elements, I would say, those who are more prone to violence and those who want a negotiated settlement. I think the majority don't want to see violence. You see rhetoric on both sides threatening violence. But once again, that rhetoric can prove dangerous because it can animate a lot of those more radical elements. And once again, this is a very volatile situation in which a game of brinksmanship can quickly spin out of control.
What would be your read on the situation? A game of brinksmanship, everybody has their emotions running high, there's a lot of pressure and unhappiness with Morsi. The Muslim Brotherhood wants to stay united. When you look at it and interpret what's happening, what do you think the ultimate decision will be?
I think there has to be some form of power-sharing agreement, and both sides have to realize that, because without a power-sharing agreement, the only alternative is further stalemate, economic downfall, and then, once again, there's that threat of violence that if it spins out of control, the worst-case scenario is a civil war.
Marco Vincenzo, thank you so much.
Thank you.